Deputies, it's 2:15. Could I ask you to be seated, please, so that we can begin? Could the person dealing with the electrics, could they connect to the microphones in the middle? Thank you. Good afternoon, Deputies, and it really is a pleasure to welcome all of you to the first meeting of the board in this new 3-year period, which we sometimes rather grandly call a triennium. Whether you are a deputy who is returning or a deputy who is newly elected, a very, very warm welcome to you. I want to begin the formal part of the proceedings with something that we do traditionally, which is a prayer. There are 2 versions of the prayer, and a newer one was composed by then Chief Rabbi Lord Sachs on the 250th anniversary of the board 5 years ago. And because it's in slightly more modern language, I think it's more in keeping with the times. So I'm going to invite deputies to stand while I read the prayer, and if you wish to don head covering, you're welcome to do so. Mi shebeirach avotenu Avraham Yitzhak v'Yaakov hu yivarech et hanasi sarei v'chaveirai vad natzige Yehudi Britannia v'chol mishoskim b'tzochei havad be'emunah. May he who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac and Jacob, bless the officers and members of the Board of Deputies of British Jews and all those who are faithfully involved in its work. Bestow on them your wisdom as they gather to do your will, seeking the welfare of your people and striving to be a blessing to others. In their deliberations, be with them in all that they do, and put into their hearts the love of righteousness and justice, compassion and truth, so that they may be faithful to your teachings and bring honor to your name. HaKadosh Baruch Hu yishalach bracha v'hatzlacha b'chol ma'aseh yedeihem. And may the Holy One, blessed be he, grant blessing and success to the work of their hands. May he spread over them and us and all humanity the tabernacle of peace, so that we may live together, respecting each other and seeking one another's good, bringing closer the day when all mankind is blessed by your presence, as it is said, and the Lord shall be king over all the earth. On that day shall the Lord be one and his name one. Bayom hahu yihyeh Adonai echad u'shmo echad. May this be his will, and let us say, Amen. Kein yehi ratzon v'nomar Amen. Thank you. Deputies, a brief introduction about me and my team in the next few minutes before we move into an induction. This is a new 3-year term. It's a new Board of Deputies. And therefore, I hope that we'll be able to bring in some innovations at the same time as I hope we will have a proper eye to the place of tradition. Because after all, isn't that how we as a people have managed our miraculous survival for nearly 4,000 years, by combining tradition with modernity and moving with and adapting with the times? Whenever anything new is tried, it doesn't always work first time. So bear with us, please. We'll try and get it right. This meeting is going to be a new form of meeting, and there will be some moving around at various times in the afternoon, and because of the constraints of space, when we come to the Deputies' Fresh Affair, you'll be moving upstairs to that, but that'll also give you a chance to meet people and to talk. One of the matters which my team and I have been very concerned about is that many deputies in the past have said when they come to the board, no one welcomed them, no one told them what to expect, no one told them what might be expected of them. And I want to change that. But we are all a very open and accessible team, and I hope you will feel free, therefore, to email any of us at any time, and also our fantastic board staff, and we'll do our best to help. Just very quickly about me, I'm a 61-year-old property lawyer, and that's really all you need to know. I'm a mediator and a part-time judge too. I was one of the youngest deputies when I was elected in my late 20s, and for far too long I remained one of the youngest deputies, I think about 20 years. That's not the case now. We have a much younger board. And one plea I would make to you, we're at a dinner party and someone says, oh, the Board of Deputies, isn't it that bunch of old geezers who chunter away on a Sunday morning in some shabby hall in Euston? Could you just tell them they're about a quarter of a century out of date? And the next question they'll ask you is, so what does the board do? If you don't already know, I hope you'll be able to tell them, you and we represent the British Jewish community to the outside world. All of you are special because you have been chosen by your constituency, whether it's a community, whether it's a communal body, to represent it at this Jewish parliament, and that is a wonderful thing. And I have had literally hundreds of people who told me that they were watching live, as people are watching our proceedings live today on the internet, meeting, which of course was the election meeting. I think the statistics are showing about 1,000 people watch a combination of live and afterwards. And there'll be quite a lot of people watching us today. So watch out, you might be caught on live TV. But that was a magnificent demonstration of communal democracy. And that's who we are. And I want us to remember that when we speak for the board, we are the body that speaks for British Jews. No other body can claim that democratic accountability and legitimacy, and I want us to hold fast to that. Representing your constituency comes with a two-way responsibility. The first responsibility, of course, is to bring here the concerns that you have, both on behalf of your constituency and also personally. At the same time, we will invite you and hope you will take back to your constituency the messages from the board. We're still, I think, in the old days too much when deputies don't really have enough free flow of information to their constituency and from their constituency. And I want to try and do something about that. As the saying is, it's not your job to complete the work, nor is it your responsibility to shirk it. And there are many things that we can do to help our communities and to help the British Jewish community. And I'll give you one right now. If there's anyone here who's not already signed up to We Believe in Israel, please go home, sign up to We Believe in Israel. Let me say straight away, Israel is not the sole concern of the Board of Deputies. We have many, and indeed there are other bodies who work specifically for Israel. But so many people have said to me, what can I do? So here's the first thing you can do. You'll get an email from We Believe in Israel, probably no more than every 2 weeks or so, but they'll come to you when they need some help, when there's a very bad letter in a newspaper or a chat show or something where they need your help. and that's a great way to start. What we're going to do today, you can see from the schedule, and we'll be starting off with some induction, but before that, some introduction. So I've introduced myself, and I'd now like to introduce my team, beginning first of all with Richard Verber, sitting on my immediate left, Senior Vice President, who chairs the International Division.
Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you very much, Johnny. I'm very honoured to have been elected to this position, and I'd like to thank publicly everybody who supported me. We have a lot to do in the coming months and years, and I very much look forward to working with all of you. A special welcome to all of the new deputies taking part in their first meeting today. I remember my first meeting very clearly some 3 and a bit years ago. If there's anything any of us can do to help you find your feet, please do not hesitate to get in touch. I really can't stress that enough. A little bit about me then before I introduce the goals for this triennium, this 3-year period. In my professional life, I work for World Jewish Relief. We are an international development agency formed in 1933 as a response to Hitler coming to power, where we rescued tens of thousands of children and then adults throughout the 1930s and 40s on the Kindertransport and other efforts. Today, we still work in predominantly the former Soviet Union, supporting vulnerable Jewish communities there, and at times of international disasters, we lead the British Jewish community's response, so most recently, tragically, with events in Nepal. Although I'm really pleased to say that once again the British Jewish community punched well above its weight. We've raised over £500,000 for that appeal, which is just phenomenal. My role is in the communications team, so trying to raise the profile of the organisation. Thanks for letting me just do that. And my work specifically is with Jewish and non-Jewish media, so I'm going to be bringing those skills to the board. Johnny has asked me to lead on 2 areas. The first is chairing the international division. You'll have a chance to learn more about my division and each of our divisions during the Deputies Freshers' Fair, but allow me to briefly outline the work that we do. You can think of the International Division as being sort of like the Foreign Office at the board. So if you're interested in international affairs, then you might like to get involved. Our division is responsible for 2 things. Firstly, we promote peace, security, prosperity, and equality for Israel and the Middle East. We're going to be taking the fight to boycott and delegitimization of Israel efforts. We speak with the Foreign and Commonwealth Office and the Department for International Development and work with other organisations to ensure the Jewish community's voice is heard. Secondly, we're responsible for British-Jewish relations with other countries and diaspora communities. We do this by liaising with Jewish communities abroad and by working with foreign. We tackle anti-Semitism, racism and extremism on an international basis, working with other organisations to do so, and ensure religious freedoms are upheld, such as Shechita and Brit Milah, and we do this working with Shechita UK and Milah UK. We won't be doing any of this alone. We need to ensure deputies and grassroots organisations play their part. We'll be providing training for deputies and for those interested in any of our issues, and offer resources and small grants to grassroots campaigners as well. The second area Johnny's asked me to look at is on some of the reforms we need to begin in order to bring our organisation a bit more up to date. If you've got an idea for how to make the board better, then I want to hear from you. We're going to begin by looking at whether our constitution is fit for purpose. Spoiler alert, it isn't. And whether we might need a better structure to help us more effectively. We'll say a bit more about this later, and we'll let everybody know how you can get involved, should you wish, in due course. That's it for me for now. I'll be back later for the induction. Thank you.
Okay, is it switched on? Okay, hi everybody, I'm Sheila Giewolb. Thank you again. I'd like to echo Richard's words for people who supported me and elected me to this position of great responsibility, which I'm thrilled and excited about. So as Richard did, just a little bit of introduction as to me, as to who I am, and what I represent, what my interests are. So I've been the deputy for Cardiff United Synagogue since 2009, and in the last triennium, I served on the Finance and Organisation Division. I've been married to Roger, who is the Deputy for St John's Wood since 2000. And between us, we have 4 daughters, one in Gibraltar, one in Paris, and one in Cumbria in the Lake District. So we travel quite a lot. And we also have 3 grandsons between us. Okay, personal interests. I'm just completing my PhD at Cardiff University. My subject is language and communication research, with specific focus on how people over 50 speak about being older in the workplace, and they're giving their views on retirement. So this is, I've done all my research, so nobody needs to come and volunteer. Thank you. In my spare time, when I have time, I like to paint. And I had a piece of work exhibited a couple of years ago, but I haven't had a lot of time recently. My interests in the board focus on education of non-Jewish school children and also interfaith. I represent Cumbria on the SACRE, which is a education Council for Religious Education, okay? I've just actually come straight from a meeting where all the Jewish representatives were in Camden looking at this subject, which is under the umbrella of the Communities Issues Division, which is my chairing position for this new triennium. Through the SACRE, linking up with my educational interests, last December I was able to have over 700 school children came to Carlisle, where there is no Jewish community, to learn about our culture and our faith and our way of life. And this is the way, one of the focuses that I have, so as we can help fight anti-Semitism through combating misconceptions and myths about our religion that help to produce race hatred. I'm going to chair the new Community Issues Division, and in doing so, I'm following Laura Marks, who returning deputies would know what an amazingly sterling job she did in raising the profile of this division, and I have forward in this area. So for those of people who may be interested in working with me in Communities Issues Division, the 2 aspects of the work are basically looking inwards and looking outwards. Community. So looking inwards, we support the Jewish community here in the UK. We work with the Inspection Service for Jewish Schools, which is called Pekuach, which is the only schools education inspection service which is registered with the Department for Education. We also have Jewish heritage within the division, which looks after disused cemeteries, and we have already worked with communities where there are no longer people being buried there in areas so diverse such as Penzance and Wolverhampton and Sunderland and Merthyr, and we have the title for 12 Jewish cemeteries, and again, work in this area is progressing. We also have support for our small communities through Jewish Connection, and I'm hoping to increase the support and the local engagement we can have with these people and their local communities. So that's looking inwards. Looking outwards, I hope to help increase the understanding of our faith and culture in the fight against anti-Semitism, as I've just mentioned. So we're looking at the education of non-Jewish school children by running Jewish living tours, bringing GCSE children into northwest London to give them a taste of Jewish life, and also by running the Jewish Living exhibition, which tours the country. And for all these activities, we need volunteers. I'm going to put a big cry out, please, for people to help with this. We have lots of people within the Jewish community who help, but not all of them are deputies. And it's an area where you can get involved. And we also have these SACREs that I mentioned. I represent Cumbria, even though I'm the deputy for Cardiff, because there was a vacancy in the Cumbria SACRE when the Blackpool rabbi resigned. And it's important that we have representation in every local authority area. There are 150 areas where we need Jewish representations on SACREs. So that's basically my 3-year strategy, is to work hard to increase the involvement in all these areas. Under the umbrella of the CID is also Stephanie Brada and Amanda Bowman, who work for Change the Board, the Bodza group, and for Jackie Naftalin and Nomi Zell, working with the women's group. And you'll get the opportunity later on today to talk to these people about the work that they do. So can I just briefly say that by way of an introduction to new people who may be interested to see the way we work, and for returning deputies, there is a meeting a week tomorrow on Monday the 29th of December, from 5:30 to 7 o'clock at the board's offices for a meeting of the division, just as by way of a handover, new people can get a taste of what we do. Thank you for your time. Thank you.
Hello, thank you. My name's Marie van der Zil, and I also want to thank you for voting for me and giving me the privilege to be up here to serve the community. I'm chairing the Defence and Group Relations Division, which was busy within about an hour of my appointment, so I think it's going to be something that's full on, and it's going to need everybody to come together. I'm not going to tell you how old I am, but I've got 2 children who are nearly 9 and nearly 11. I'm an employment lawyer, and I've got 23 years' experience. So my job is to defend rights. I hope to show a really big interest in the division, because we need the very best people to come forward through what the division deals with, because there's 2 different parts. The first part is the defence of Jewish freedoms, rights and securities, which I will expand on in a minute. And the second is the relation with other UK communities, particularly faith communities. We have to identify priority areas for this division. There's so much to do. So let's look at some of the priority areas. It's not cast in stone, but these are what I think we need to do. Anti-Semitism, racism and extremism. This includes the work of the CST, which will also need to be scrutinised. By its nature, this is reactive, and I think that we also need to concentrate on some proactive parts. For example, there's consideration for a project for anti-Semitism in mainstream schools, looking at that, and also looking at rights for end of life and care in the Jewish community. So we need to consider those aspects as well. Religious freedoms, the second area. The defence of Shahita, Milah, workplace issues, medical issues, again, end of life, making the case for Jewish care, for Jewish rights, and family law, and expanding the relationships that we currently have with Shahita and Milah UK. The third area, interfaith relations. This is particularly important in times that we're facing now, and there needs to be particular emphasis on all faiths, including the Muslim population. The next area is students. We know that they're facing a very difficult time on campus, and it's the job of the board to support the excellent work of the Union of Jewish Students on campus. So there we are. Much of the work of the division is necessarily reactive. For example, the planned response to the situation in Golders Green, but we want to make sure that we're going to become strategic. The division works in a more detailed way. For example, it works with parliamentarians and provides the secretariat to the all-party parliamentary group on British Jews. You may not know, it also runs training and tours for civil servants on Jewish issues and organises seminars for local councillors. It produces, and we're going to have an event soon, resources for employers and other sectors that explain Jewish working practices, which is all very important in today's society. There's a wide range of interests, therefore, across this division, and the principal projects that we're going to have for the next triennium are: 1, seeking to better map anti-Semitism and tackle it at the very root. 2, advocating for improved enforcement of existing laws. 3, continually emphasising the importance of relationships between all UK faith groups, but particularly fundamentally to improve the relationships between Jews and Muslims. 4, to actively promote the rights of Jews, particularly in the workplace. And 5, to improve the understanding of and support for the right of Jews to basic practices like Shahita. So you can see there's an awful lot here, and I hope that you will come and see me later where we can talk about this more, and to come forward to give all the help that you can and to have an interest in joining the division. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Stuart MacDonald. Hearing from the heads of 3 divisions that represent, if you will, the meat, much of the meat of what the board does. In a sense, the finance and organisation division represents the business, the lightest of all senses of the board. We're charged with 3 really important areas. And I know the elections are over, but in a sense the real competition now begins, because I just want to suggest to you that the best of you will think seriously about getting involved with the F&O rather than these other three. If you want to actually... I don't want to be competitive, but there we are. Let me quickly what the F&O does. One of the areas, the most obvious, is financial management. We of something north of £1 million per year and a multiplicity of activities, and we've already been diving fairly deeply since the elections into the small print and the nuances of our finances. We have so many competing demands on our money that it's a fairly involved try and superimpose a coherent and disciplined framework onto all of this, but we've tried to hit the ground before the formal convening of the divisions in September. There'll be a lot to get your teeth into if you're into that sort of thing. Organisation, those of us who've served through the last triennium before know that there's been a lot of advocacy of change. There is now some momentum for that, partly represented, embodied in the Ruthless Surge report, which came out of the august work of a working group that included some view in the last triennium, looking at how the organisation could become more accountable, more transparent, and actually more efficient. And this is an area that we're going to be doing a lot fairly quickly. There are some pretty to be pushed through in the next few months. Box a little smarter in terms of projecting ourselves into the community, convincing our fellows out there of the merits of the value of what we do. We won't be able to generate the revenues that we need in order to fund the work of these three other divisions. And if any of you have expertise in fundraising in the voluntary sector or sales and marketing more broadly, or public relations or brand building, there will be plenty for you to get your teeth into if you want to get involved with the F&O. Obviously, we're going to have breakout sessions. I know already that some of the smartest of you are going to come towards me and talk about coming into the F&O. But in seriousness, and that includes you, Rosalind, I really want the smartest of you to come on board. And just in parting, I do want to thank a few people, not the people who elected me, like I would thank you for this, but some people who've given me advice and support in recent weeks, months, years. My predecessors, Treasurer Lawrence Bross, Johnny mentioned age, and youngsters like Richard and Sheila and Maria's side. There is something to be said for age, and I'd like to thank Lionel Koplowitz here for giving me some very good advice ex officio over the last few months, and to congratulate him for a long overdue MBE, long overdue, I'm sure. And also to say welcome, Also to say that I'm really, really pleased to see some old friends who were deputies in the past coming back to us, like Richard Sassoon over there, and to see some other friends who I know are lost to other divisions, here, like Edwin Schuker. Why on earth you don't join the F&O? But I also would like to thank Jerry Lewis for putting up such a good campaign during the course of the election, which really did... These elections, I'm not being funny about this, the elections before a triennium begins are so important. They force you to actually focus on what you're going to do. I can absolutely promise you that my peers here, my colleagues here, and I have done our best to hit the ground running even before the new triennium starts in earnest. And we would welcome all the help that any of you can give. We've expanded the membership of the divisions to 16 in order to increase your ability to participate. Please come and see us in the breakout sessions, and please stand for election in the forthcoming divisional elections. Be very welcome to join us. That's all.
Very much, team. In introducing Tony Leifer, who's going to say a couple of words about the Constitution Committee next, I'm going to show you our Constitution. It's too long, it's too cumbersome, it contains far too much abstruse language, and we need to modernise. It's been modernised piecemeal over the years, and now I think there's a general feeling that we need something a bit more root and branch. So for those of you who are dyed-in-the-wool traditionalists, hold on to your seats, because I think the general feeling is we've got to move on. things, and this is a wonderful example of it, the Constitution doesn't really make enough provision for flexibility. So here's a problem we've got straight away. Many of the new deputies, including possibly some of you, and frankly until Tuesday me, were not actually validated by their constituencies because they hadn't sent back the return signed by the chairman or the president or whatever it is, confirming the result of the election and that it had been conducted in a democratic manner. The result is that we probably only have roughly half of you technically validated as deputies. And that would mean that if we had adhered to the strict constitutional timetable, many of you would actually have been ineligible to stand for the divisional elections which we're going to hold, chaired by my team, even before you were eligible. You'd have been barred before you were disbarred. Well, we can't have that, and I don't think that would have worked to the interests of deputies or the communities. In addition to that, the executive committee from the out years decided we needed to widen the pool of you who wanted to volunteer to work within the specialised committees of the board. So we decided to up it substantially from 12 deputies to 16 as members who could stand, and we think that would be very broadly welcomed. But that only made the problem worse because we were going to have more deputies elected and fewer deputies eligible. And consequently, I want to announce to you today, and I would like to take a very broad show of hands to say that we're going to have to give a special notice this week which will waive the provisions of the Constitution on a vote which we have to take constitutionally in July, retroactively to enable the elections to take place in a compressed period. And it's all in a good cause. It's to enable as many of you as possible to stand for election to the divisions without the division elections having taken place without you even having got to first base. So we're going to have a compressed timetable. The first papers will go out this week, give you information about the different divisions for which you can stand and how to go about it. You'll know exactly how to go about it. It's very, very simple, but we do have to follow some steps. So if you don't mind me being terribly broad, can I ask you to indicate by a show of hands whether you are willing for us to do something which will enable a waiving of the normal electoral timetable in favour of a compressed one? Okay, this is not about detail. I'm just really grateful to you for principle. And thank you very much for that, because I mean, we do want to do what's practical. And the trouble with the Constitution is that sometimes it can actually get you hung up on things, and it shows that we've got some work to do. Tony.
Very much. I'll just add a couple of words the President just said. The vote that we've just taken here is not a binding vote. We have to go through a proper resolution, and that will happen on the 19th of July, when we will retrospectively waive the provisions that haven't been complied with. The intention is that the first papers will go out to deputies this coming Tuesday, together with a resolution to be considered on the 19th of July, so everyone will know exactly what is going on, what's being waived, and they'll have all the information they need to nominate people for the regional boards. Now to turn to the Constitution Committee. Unlike everyone else who's spoken, I haven't recently come into post. I've been in this job of being chairman of the Constitution Committee for 3 years already. So what am I doing here? In effect, unappointed. I'll explain that in a moment. But first of all, I want to say a little bit about what the Constitution Committee does. It advises and interprets the Constitution for the benefit of the board. That happens quite often when the Constitution Committee is called on to advise on the spot, or I'm called on to advise on the spot. And we also advise the Executive Committee and the President whenever called upon. We draft documents, for example, the resolution that is going to be proposed on the 19th of July. The committee will be considering a draft later today. We have some specific functions as set down in the Constitution. One, and I'll just give you a couple of examples. One is when an organisation wishes to join the board, not a synagogue, but another sort of an organisation wishes to join the board, the Constitution Committee to recommend its accession to the board so that the board Constitution Committee has got discretion to recommend organisations which don't fit in exactly with the constitutional requirements. For example, there should be 500 members of an organisation if it's to join the board. And we had an example of this in the last year, quite controversially, when Yachad came up for representation, and that was approved by the Constitution Committee and by the requisite 2/3 of the members of the board. One other example is the Code of Conduct. A Code of Conduct was introduced about deputies' conduct in the last triennium, and it requires two basic obligations of deputies. One is, although it's expressed more fully, one is not to bring the board into disrepute, and the other is to treat others with respect. If there is a complaint made to the Constitution Committee, we first of all consider, is it worth considering at all? Is there what lawyers would call a prima facie case? And if there is, then we ask the person complained against what they've got to say about it, and we come to a judgment. And there are penalties provided for in the Code of Conduct, which is now part of the Constitution, some of which the Constitution Committee can impose themselves, and others to recommend to the Executive Committee to consider. So those are things we do. Who are the Constitution Committee? There are 6 members, and they are either, under the present Constitution, either appointed or elected by the Executive Committee. Now, since there won't be a full Executive Committee in place holding its first meeting until October, after 2 months' gap, when there is much less board activity, the present Constitution Committee is going to continue in place then, and then there will be either elected or appointed by the Executive Committee. So that's what I'm still doing here. How do you become a member of the Constitution Committee? Well, your deputies will be asked if they want to put themselves forward, and you put yourself forward, and then the Executive Committee considers whether you're suitable. So what do you need to be suitable? You don't have to be a lawyer. I am, as it happens, a lawyer. It's good to have at least some members who are lawyers, and I think that otherwise you need to be a logical, analytical person, and I think that probably applies to everybody here, doesn't it? So I would encourage people to put themselves forward so as the Executive Committee has a wide range of people to choose from. It is interesting, and it's worthwhile. It's not doing the important work that the honorary officers do, but it does matter to the Board of Deputies. There will be a lot of work to do, particularly as demonstrated by the problems we've had in relation to the election of divisional boards. There's going to be work to do to look at and revise the Constitution for consideration by the board as a whole. So it'll be a busy time, but it's a worthwhile time, and good people are needed.
I'm Gillian Merrin, and I'm very proud to have been Chief Executive of the Board of Deputies for nearly a year. And as many of you will know, I started at the same time as the Israel-Gaza conflict, so things have definitely got better, in my opinion. And I'm very conscious that you and my colleagues on the top table as honorary officers and the President are all volunteers. And you will always find me respectful of that and want to support you in the role that you carry out. And I would say thank you to all of you for giving up your time and energy. You could always be doing something else, but you choose to support the board, and I'm extremely grateful for that. The distinction, of course, between myself, the President and the honorary officers is that they are all elected democratically. I am appointed by them. And my job overall, if I had to summarise it, is to make it happen. I, as many of you will know, spent 13 years as a Member of Parliament for Lincoln, where I remain as a member of the community there, and also serving as a government minister in 5 departments, and I was also a senior government whip. So if there's any trouble, Johnny will deploy me to sort it out. And despite all of that political experience, nothing could prepare me, of course, for the politics of the Jewish community. But I'm getting there. What do I do? As I say, it's my job to make it happen. 3 main headlines. I lead a staff team of committed professionals who cover a whole range of areas to make the things you've just heard about happen. So from influencing government to interfaith work, from media to supporting the democracy of the board, from organising events to arranging our policy and promoting it on education. That's what we do. We, and I specifically, advise and guide. Where do we need to get to? How do we get there? And how do we actually make it happen? So what you've heard about today are our activities, but you're also hearing about our policy, and that's the role of our senior elected representatives. And it's my role to make sure that that democratic wish is implemented. And I'm also a go-to person, so if you don't know who to go to, please come to me and always feel free. And I know that I speak on behalf of all of the staff when I say we are more than happy to help you in any way that we can. So our overall mission is, of course, the Board of Deputies is the voice of the Jewish community. Our mission is to make sure it's a better and louder and clearer voice. And I'm very much looking forward to working with all of you over the next 3 years and enjoying the contribution that you can make and enjoying the contribution that I can make to working with you. Thank you.
It's over to Senior Vice President Richard Verber to deal with the induction part of the proceedings in the next few minutes. Richard.
Thank you, Johnny. Please vote for... sorry, wrong speech. Good afternoon again, everybody. One of the commitments we have made is to make the Board of Deputies more open, inclusive and accessible. We thought it would be helpful, therefore, to spend a small amount of time on an induction, trying to bring people up to speed. To our more experienced deputies, my apologies, as much of this will be known to you already. If I don't get something right, please just let me know. And to our new deputies, I hope this is useful. If you'd like more information, there will be time for questions. When I've finished, you can come and chat with one of us afterwards, or just send us an email. Whatever we can do to help, we'll do. I'm going to speak for about 15 minutes or so, and we'll begin with the first question. How does the Board of Deputies work? As Gillian said, it's through a mixture of volunteers and paid staff. The volunteers are us, the deputies. We are elected from synagogues and Jewish organisations from across the United Kingdom. There's an elected president, who's the most senior lay leader in the Jewish community. There are 3 vice presidents and a treasurer. Collectively, they're called the honorary officers. They are also the trustees of the charity. As you've heard, the vice presidents and the treasurer each lead one of the 4 divisions. Together, they set the vision and direction for the organisation. They are supported by a staff team of more than 20 people based in Camden, led by our Chief Executive, Gillian. You can find out their details and how to contact them via the contact details in your welcome pack. You can get involved in a division in a couple of ways. The first and best way is to run for election to join the division. Each of them has 16 spaces available, as Tony said. We'll be shortly sending out nomination forms. All you need to do is to get 2 people to nominate you and to write a personal statement of 200 words to encourage people to vote for you. The elections will be during the board meeting in July. In one of the workshops this afternoon, we'll be looking about how do you go about writing that personal statement. Members of the division Members of the division work with their chair to execute the strategy. The timing and locations of the meetings are decided by the division, and they meet roughly once a month or so. In September, each division will also elect a vice chair to support the chair. If you missed any of this, don't worry, we'll be emailing you with full details. The second way to get involved is just by going to a meeting for one of the divisions. They are open to any deputy to come along. You just need to get the details from the relevant chair. The work of the board and the honorary officers is scrutinised by deputies, first and foremost, during these board meetings, which happen currently about 8 times a year. Again, you have in your pack the dates of the meetings until January 2016. So please do take a moment later to take a look at them and put the dates in your diaries. The board's work is also scrutinised by the executive, which is mostly made up of the honorary officers and vice chairs of the divisions. Earlier this year, deputies voted to have 4 new positions on the executive, reserved exclusively for deputies from the main plenary, directly elected by all of us. This election will happen later in the autumn, and again, more details to come. My second question: what is the purpose of a deputy? Why on earth are we here? So I've already mentioned coming along to about 8 meetings a year, but what else should we be doing? What makes the Board of Deputies unique is that we are the only democratically elected representative organisation for the Jewish community. This structure gives us a unique position to speak on behalf of the community, to government, the media, other faith groups, and wider society. Deputies are the liaisons, if you like, between their constituency, i.e. the community or the synagogue or the Jewish organisation which elected them. For the most part, that is synagogues, but we do also have a number of great Jewish charities represented at the board. And we are the representatives of our constituencies at the board, and also the representatives of the board in our constituencies. We ask that deputies feed the board's communications and policy back to their communities effectively, perhaps via your synagogue's newsletter or speaking after a Shabbat morning service. We ask that you ensure that our New Look community briefing email is shared widely. Deputies should also tell the board about local issues affecting your community. You might want to arrange for your members to meet with you to ask them what their concerns are, or you might want to send them a survey to fill in online. You should also meet regularly with your synagogue's or organisation's board of management in order to ensure this is really a 2-way dialogue. Deputies that represent synagogues are key to helping us ensure that the communal levy that member synagogues undertake to seek from their members is collected. Stuart, our treasurer, can help you with guidance on that. You might also want to get involved in our fundraising efforts. We have a really limited budget and are always looking for ways for support. In order to make sure that we make the best use of all deputies, again, in your packs, we've included a form to find out what skills and interests we have. Perhaps you speak a number of foreign languages, or you know about charity law, or you're interested in social action, or you're passionate about defending Israel. We want to know. Please fill in this form today, if you can, and hand it in to any of us. If you don't have time, you can always post it back to the office. Meetings, as has already been mentioned, are live streamed, so the whole Jewish community can watch it online and engage, should they wish. This is, after all, their Board of Deputies as well. It also allows deputies who are perhaps unwell to not miss what goes on during a meeting. We have a camera just over there, as you've probably seen, and microphones both at the far end of the room and in front of me. These are for you to make your contributions during the meetings. Please know, and I cannot stress this enough, anything you say is recorded and is live streamed. So if you think, perhaps, hypothetically, you might be about to say something controversial that might, perhaps, not necessarily be great if it was reprinted in a newspaper or brought in front of a court of law, please really think whether you do need to say your particular contribution. To help deputies find their feet at the board, we offer a mentoring programme. Whether you're a new deputy or you just feel like chatting with somebody who's been involved, we will do our best to pair you with someone you'll get on with. At our Deputies Freshers' Fair this afternoon, you will have the opportunity to both offer your services as a mentor and request to receive a mentor as well. And a big thank you to Naomi Zell and Jackie Naftalin for leading on this. Again, their email addresses and a little more information about this are in your welcome packs. At the Freshers' Fair, you'll also be able to learn more about each of the divisions. There'll be a stall to check that the board has got the best contact details for you. Please go and say hello. Staff will be on hand to ensure that they've got answers to any questions you might have about the registration process. There's also a stall for regional deputies, which we roughly define as anywhere outside of the M25 motorway, or as my London friends like to call it, the North. Seriously, though, we acknowledge that our strength really is being a national body that takes in Wales, Scotland, Northern Ireland, and England, and we aim to make our meetings as inclusive as possible. There's also the opportunity to join the Regional Council. Again, more details at their stall. The board's women's group, ongoing goal to support and encourage women deputies within a fully representative board to take advantage of the vast wealth, skills, talents, experience, and ability of our women deputies. The board should be seen as a leader and model of best practice in regard to issues of gender equality. Again, for more information, please visit their stall. The Change in the Board group was formed 3 years ago to bring about changes to make the board more inclusive, including of different ages. It introduced live streaming and pushed for the code of conduct. They're looking at their aims for the coming 3 years, and again, if you'd like to know more about that, please visit their stall. Freshers' Fair is BODSA, that's the Board of Deputies Social Action. They run events such as blood drives or Mitzvah Day. They are always looking for enthusiastic new members as well as ideas for more projects. You can meet them in the Freshers' Fair. We're nearly there. Following the Freshers' Fair, which will happen upstairs on level 3, we'll be coming back down here for a choice of short workshops. This is how we hope to run business for future meetings, a mix of the core board business, which we're going to do next. That will allow us the chance to discuss the important issues of the day, but also some smaller groups so that deputies can focus their time and energy on particular topics which interest them. There are 5 such workshops today. Johnny will be leading a session asking, what's the Board of Deputies for? Stuart will be running an introduction to the work of the Finance and Organisation Division. Marie will be tackling opportunities and threats facing the community, while Sheila will be leading one on how the board can support smaller communities. And as I've mentioned, I'll be running a session about how to write an election statement ahead of the July divisional elections. We're going to repeat those session titles later during the Freshers' Fair, in case you didn't catch them. Lastly, we really want your feedback on all of this. As we try new things, we're going to get some things right. That's good. But we also need to hear where you think we can make things better. Please tell us. This is all of our Board of Deputies. We're all responsible for making it the best it can be. I'm going to pause now, and before I hand back over to Johnny, offer the chance for any questions on anything I've said so far. Thank you.
Denise, do come to the microphone. Do go to the microphone. There's anyone, I can't see that's Jerry, I can see.
Denise Lester, South Hampstead United Synagogue. First of all, Mazel Tov, congratulations to the HOs and congratulations to all deputies, old and new, for being here, and including those absent friends. And also to Lionel Kopalovitz, a very special Mazel Tov on his honour. A couple of questions and just a couple of suggestions. First of all, I think it would be helpful for the deputies to know who Jackie and Naomi are as they've organised. So I think it would be helpful if they could actually stand up, please, so that people know who they are and to thank them. The other thing is just drawing on the interest pack, and thank you for this. I think this ought to be emailed out to those who are not here, as well as those who are. But also, could we have an exchange of information across the deputies so that we actually cross-network and use our skills into each other and for the benefit of the board? And also, could people, if they wouldn't mind, put their photographs up? I'm very conscious that it takes a while to get to know people, and the quicker that happens and the quicker we can use our skill and talent for the benefit of the board as well as each other, the better. Thank you very much. Wish you a very well over the next 3 years. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Denise, for those helpful pointers, which I've all jotted down.
Jerry Lewis, Hampstead Synagogue, maiden speech this session. I second everything that Denise said, especially to Lionel, who's seated in his privileged position, and we really are very, very pleased that after many years of waiting for his honour, he's now at long last been recognised. He's well deserved. I'm also delighted with the fresh approach all of you on the top table have shown towards communicating, and the welcome pack is excellent. And if I think carefully, over the last 40 years of my membership of this board, it's the first time we've had staff telephone numbers issued, which is a very, very welcome change. It's going to make life easier for everybody to contact deputies and staff. Can I just make one small, minor correction to what has been said so far? This is addressed specifically to new deputies. Yes, we have an election coming up at the July meeting where people are elected to the 4 divisions. I'm glad they've been put up to 16. But there is one small factor. Not everybody is known, and new deputies should not be disheartened by the fact that they may find it difficult to become elected if they are not known to others. There's a simple rule at the board. Anybody can go to any divisional meeting if they so wish. And I hope it will become practice of the officers to ensure that the dates and times of the meetings are circulated on a regular basis to all deputies, so that any deputy, elected or not elected, can attend a divisional meeting. The only difference between elected and non-elected...
Jerry, you're on amber, which gives me the opportunity to introduce new deputies to our traffic light system. So, Jerry, thank you very much for agreeing to be part of that experiment.
I can't see any light here at all.
If you go over deputies, I'll give you a bit more time, Jerry. If you go over, I think it's 2.5 minutes.
4 minutes.
An amber
Read
light,
the Constitution.
An amber light will go on, and then at the red light, I will have to stop you, otherwise we just don't get the business done. So, Jerry, if you can wrap up in 30 seconds.
Just to remind everybody, the Constitution says 4 minutes, so don't be bamboozled. The point I was making is that the only difference is that those people who are elected can vote. Votes take place very rarely in a division. Those out of London may be affected, and the simple answer to that is that if you do want to come to a division meeting, ask, I hope, the Treasurer. He may be agreeable to have expenses paid for those who are ex officio visitors as well as those elected. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Jerry.
Thanks, Jerry, and I heartily echo your remarks. Yes, please. And particularly any new deputies who would like to raise anything, this is your opportunity as well.
Janet Tresman, Deputy for Finchley Progressive Synagogue, not quite new deputy. It's very nice to see a very refreshing looking new top table. Congratulations all. I'm not here to ask for votes, but I have been on the Defence Division and I'd like to serve again. What I had noticed that in the pack there was a deputy's interests paper that we've been asked to fill in. I disagree that it should be circulated amongst all the deputies. I feel strongly that that's confidential, the information on, just for the use of the board and the executive officers, and really I don't think it's something that we should be circulating. I forgot what else I was going to say as well, but...
Thank you very much, Annie. I think we need to move on. I think we should move on, because time's already pressing. Come and talk to us afterwards. I said before that we're going to expand the divisions from 12 to 16 to give many more of you a chance. And I think that'll be widely welcomed. But I'm advised by Tony that I really ought to seek an affirmative vote for that, at least initially by show of hands. So could I ask those people who are in favour of expanding the divisions from 12 deputies to 16, please show. Thank you. Are there any against? One. Thank you very much indeed. I think that's carried. I'm now going to move on to the formal part of the proceedings. In future meetings, this may be a bit longer, not from me, but because one or more of the team will also be reporting. First of all, the minutes. The minutes have been circulated, and the only notifications of changes that we've heard from Jeremy Friedman, to whom, first of all, I apologise, his name was misspelt as returning officer, and secondly, wishes to point out that the computer programme by which the votes were counted is a computer programme approved by the Electoral Reform Society. So there being no other amendments to the minutes, I shall sign them as a correct record. I will move on to the President's statement. Did you have another amendment, Dorrie? Okay.
Dorrie Schmetterling, New West End Synagogue, Bayswater. Just a minor point, as you're going to sign formally, I did send in some amendments. They were not material like the electoral board, but there were some grammatical errors and something else, and my submission was totally ignored. Now, I did write in about that, but I think if we are invited to participate in correcting or amending the minutes, I think it'd be nice to get an acknowledgement, and I did have some corrections to make. Now, if they're ignored, if they're rejected, that's fine, but I should be told they're rejected. Thank you very much.
Dorrie, you're quite right. I didn't see them, so I don't know what happened to them, but I will ask some questions. All right? Maybe they got lost somewhere in the system. Right, the President's statement. Now, in keeping with what we've done in the past and perhaps moving it forward a bit, I'm not actually going to read any of this. I'll just touch on a couple of the points. The first announcement, though, I ought to make, because I've only just heard about it, which is not in the announcement, is on your behalf to wish a refuah shalema to immediate past President Vivian Wyman, who is recovering in hospital after a surgery. And I know that all our good wishes go with him, and we'll be in touch with him very soon. As I've said, I've only just heard of his indisposition. On the other announcement, of course, I heartily endorse the Mazel Tov wishes that are set out here. I'm not going to wish myself Mazel Tov. I would particularly like to congratulate all the members of our community who were so prominent in the receipt of honours from Her Majesty the Queen on the recent awards for her birthday. And it is a matter of enormous pride to our community that we have such distinguished members, and it's a particularly fine matter that our own deputies, we've already mentioned past President Dr. Lionel Kopolovitz, who was awarded an MBE, and I don't think she can be present today, but our marvellous galloping great-grandmother, Flora Frank, who's now on her 32nd marathon, was given the significant award of the British Empire Medal, and I know that we'll rejoice in that. What I will do is simply mention each section. If anyone wants to ask me questions about that, they can stand up and do that. My aims as President, I think by now you will have seen that I've set them out in interviews in the Jewish Chronicle, in the Jewish News, in letters to you, and latterly yesterday in an interview in the Times. It's the second page from the back of Saturday's Times. And I will seek to be a very visible, and as I hope anyone who knows me know, I will speak up for our community in every way I can. And the overriding principle, as I've stressed here, in all that I do is to work for the good of our community and always to emphasise the leadership role of the Board of Deputies as the community's representative body with democratic legitimacy. Anyone wish to ask me any questions about that section? Robert Stone. Right, okay. Well, let's move on then. Golders Green Together. Now, I have no update at the moment. What I can tell you is that the Metropolitan Police are absolutely conscious of their powers to control a static demonstration. It cannot be banned because of the legal right of freedom of expression, but it can be controlled. The demonstration, ugly, blatant, anti-Semitic, provocative, and utterly unacceptable, not just to Jews, but to every decent person, is due to take place on Saturday week, Shabbat, the 4th of July. And what we have done thus far is to put together with the London Jewish Forum and Hope Not Hate, Golders Green Together. Gold and green. And it's a wonderful strapline. There's going to be a photograph, I think, of us a little bit later today for the media holding up the gold and green. There'll be leaflets. This is a response to provocation which brings together all the faiths and all the sectors of society in the area. And I want to pay a public tribute, Adrian, to your team at London Jewish Forum for your agreeing to put together this through your quite limited staff, working extremely hard with our staff as well, and also the sterling efforts of Hope Not Hate, who are seasoned anti-racist campaigners with whom we can and we rightly are making common cause. It is too early for me to say now that I would like members of the community, deputies and others, to be present in Golders Green because I cannot yet confirm that this demonstration is going to take place in that place on that day. But watch this space. I will not hesitate if this demonstration is going to take place. For those of you who wish to keep your Shabbat in a particular way you do and stay at home or ignore it, absolutely. I respect it totally. For those of you who want to gather together to show that we reject anti-Semitism and racism of every description, we will come together, if necessary, out of dignity, out of strength, out of pride in our identity, and our utter revulsion of racism of every sort. And I will not hesitate to call the community to come in that way, and indeed I will be present myself in the area for Shabbat, especially if it comes to it, but I don't know if it's going to. That is all the information I can give you. The only other thing I will say is that we will be leafleting the area on the 3rd of July, the Friday. We will be all joining together to paint the area green and gold and to promote Golders Green Together. And I hope that as many of you as possible will join with me in doing that. And I'll take any questions on that subject. Yes, please. What's his name? Sorry? Gary Mond.
Gary Mond from the JNF. I had a meeting this morning with my chairman of the JNF, Samuel Hayek, and he asked me to tell the board that in the event that you, Mr. President, and the board wish to promote any counter-demonstration or any presence on our side on the 4th of July, that the JNF is prepared to make available to the board our full mailing list for distribution. That is to say that you can email everyone on the JNF's mailing list to tell them what you're planning to do. Also, we are prepared to lay on Shabbat hospitality, local synagogues, and especially important, as I believe the weather forecast is, it's going to be very hot next weekend in more ways than one, bottles of water for everyone present on our side. Thank you very much.
That's very helpful. Thank you very much. Jonathan Davies, Golders Green Synagogue.
Jonathan Davis, Golders Green Synagogue. Mr. President, we were delighted yesterday to welcome you to Golders Green Community's centenary. The community in 100 years has been through good times and bad, and we're not going to be knocked off course by a small number of anti-Semitic demonstrators. But we think the best reaction on Shabbat the 4th of July is to ensure absolute business as usual. We will be looking for the advice of the board, the police and the CST to ensure that we can have business as usual in safety and in safety for our members. And I know many of our members who are going to have to walk past the likely site of this demonstration are concerned to ensure they will be able to come to shul in safety. But my own community is very concerned, and I know it's the view of one of the officers and our rabbis, that we do not support a counter-demonstration in Golders Green on the 4th of July. The view of my community is that that is giving these small number of demonstrators the oxygen of publicity. It is treating them with far more respect and attention that they deserve. It is in danger of backfiring on our community. And I would urge you, as you say, issues are fluid. It may endanger those members of our community who have to walk through Golders Green to get to shul. And I would urge you, President, as you say things are fluid, to talk very actively with the particular local communities so that what is done in Golders Green is done in conjunction with the local communities that are most affected by this.
Sheila, yeah. Sheila, I think you were first.
Sheila Levitt, EDRS. My friends who go to the church in Temple Fortune, they call themselves Christian Friends of Israel. They are going to be marching. They're leaving the church at 10:30 with a banner saying they are Christian Friends of Israel and support, are against what is happening.
Thank you. Roger.
Thank you, Mr. President. Roger Winfield, Liberal Jewish Synagogue. On the issue of anti-Semitism, it's all bad news, obviously, and what is going to happen in Golders Green, or what might happen in Golders Green, is something that has to be dealt with in the way that has been discussed. But one of the most encouraging and hopeful reports of the last few weeks, and I think this board should give due credit to Rabbi Barry Marcus and his engagement with John Galliano, who, as most of us will remember, as a very well-known fashion designer, was sacked for an anti-Semitic outburst in Paris. Well, the result of the engagement of Rabbi Marcus was that Galliano came to this country and addressed at least one Jewish event. What I suggest to the board is that the board should consider more constructive engagement with people who are seen or are perceived to be anti-Semitic. I'm not suggesting for one moment, and I emphasize this, that this applies to the event in Golders Green, but there are many occasions when individuals are accused by this board of being anti-Semitic, but I would encourage the board to engage in constructive engagement with them based on the success of Rabbi Marcus. Thank you.
Well, I'd like to thank deputies for those points. Roger, of course, we consider constructive engagement. That's the first consideration, and we do it on a case-by-case basis. Jonathan Davies raised some important points which encapsulate, if you like, the very valid strategic discussion which we have to have. But in many ways, I think the answer to Jonathan was given by Sheila Levitt. If we have our good, decent friends from other faiths marching in Golders Green, can we really be absent? I think we do need to be there. I think we will be extremely grateful to the CST, who will be doing, as always, a sterling job of ensuring our safety and our security. But I think that if people who actually have the gall and the stupidity and the historical amnesia to proclaim themselves Nazi sympathizers turn up on the streets of a Jewish part of London on any day of the week, particularly on a Shabbat when people are on the streets, I don't think that it is a feasible alternative in the end for us just to turn our back and ignore them and pretend it's not happening. And it's certainly not feasible when some of our interfaith friends are there demonstrating against. On a more positive note, I regard part of the role of the board and my role to celebrate Jewish life everywhere, and that's why I was delighted to join Jonathan's congregation at its historic service for its centenary yesterday. And if any of your constituencies have a similar significant anniversary, I will always, if invited, do my best to come. I'll move on to the next item, Jewish Leadership Council. Anyone want to ask me anything about that? Sharon Bannister. Can I say Sharon is the president of the Manchester and area Jewish Representative Council. That makes her the Queen Jewess of the north of England. And Sharon, we're delighted to see you here, even though you're not wearing your regalia.
No, I'm not wearing. Is this working? Yes. Can you hear me? I've read your comments, and I'm actually quite disappointed that you're not going to stand as chair of the JLC. I respect your wishes. I don't agree with them. I think it's important to keep the board and the JLC more united to move forward. And I think being president of the board and chair of JLC would have been a positive step. And I feel that you're separating them out.
Robert Stone.
Robert Stone, Finnish Reform Synagogue. First, Mr. President, since you couldn't congratulate yourself, allow me to wish you Mazel Tov on the birth of your granddaughter. Having 3 of them, I can tell you they're wonderful. And secondly, for a change, I'm not going to express an opinion, but ask a question. Why are you not standing as president of the JLC?
Yes.
Warren Usden from the Shore Hebrew congregation in South Manchester. First of all, could I also reiterate congratulations to all the new honorary officers. I think I can safely say that that each of you were one of my preferences. I'd just like to reiterate the previous question. It's a very bold announcement. What I wanted to ask you is, what are the reasons for that decision, and what ramifications might arise from that decision? Could I also just say that this is the first time I saw the President's statement was when it was available on a table downstairs. I know that things have probably been very, very hectic lately, but can we expect the President's statement in advance of future meetings so we have more chance?
It was emailed on Friday.
Never got it. Okay, thank you.
It's normally emailed on Thursday or Friday. Susan Pascoe, Paul Edlin, Linda Sharp.
Susan Pascoe, Nairstraw Community. It's certainly of symbolic significance, your decision, and potentially strategic significance. Could you please comment on your view of the future of merger negotiations with the Jewish Leadership Council and where you see those going? Thank you very much.
Linda, you had a question. Was there anyone else? Paul. Yeah, go to the microphone, Linda.
Paul Edlin, Glasgow Jewish Representative Council. First of all, can congratulate the officers on their appointment and the changes which are very pleasurable to see. I note your position with the JLC with some approval. In the last triennial, and I say this with my words chosen carefully, I feel the JLC did not treat this board or our previous president with the respect he and the board deserved, and I feel this strategic change by you puts this board at the top, and that is your first priority, and you're doing that, and I commend you for what you're doing.
Linda Sharp, this is my maiden speech for Finchley Kinloss Garden Synagogue. Do you think, if you don't want to stand, Mr. President, on the JLC, there should be a representative from the board, as every single organisation is represented on the board? Do you think there should be someone there at the JLC?
Well, I'll answer those questions. First of all, please don't read too much into this short announcement, because there wasn't really any more to say. The reason that I decided that I didn't want to take a Jewish Leadership Council position was that my first responsibility is to the board. It's as simple as that. And I think the reaction to one of your questions and the reaction I've heard just today, I think shows that that is at any rate, the majority view, although of course, Sharon, I respect what you've just said. But remember this, the Council of Members of the Jewish Leadership Council meets about 4 times a year. It doesn't take all the decisions, those are mainly taken by the trustees. The president of the board, under the constitution of the JLC, as I understand it, is automatically a trustee. So whether I would have chosen to run for that position or not, I am in fact already a trustee of the Jewish Leadership Council. I intend to try to get the relationship between the board and the Jewish Leadership Council right. I'm new. I may have been a vice president for 6 years, but it was Vivian who played the main role in the Jewish Leadership Council, and it wasn't me. So I'm finding my feet. And therefore, there's not much more I can say in answer to people who said to me, well, why? I'm going to stand back from being participating in what in fact I believe would be a contested election for chair of the members of the council, to say, well, I'll act as a trustee. I will in fact be a member of the Council of Members, so the board will be present because the board is represented there through the president. So I will play my role, it's just that I've decided not to stand as chair. In answer to Susan, again, I'm new. It's a little bit difficult to say. I think it's reasonable to say that the subject of merger between the board and the Jewish Leadership Council seems to be somewhat on the distant horizon at the moment. Let's not run before we can walk. Let me find my feet. I absolutely hope, like Paul, that the relationship with the Jewish Leadership Council will be one of mutual courtesy and respect, and that the Jewish Leadership Council will recognise the board's preeminent role, as Vivian put it shortly after the last election 3 years ago, as the true leadership of the British Jewish community. And then we'll take it from there. I'll move on to NUS. I think my statement spoke for itself and was, of course, discussed with UJS before it was issued. And a warm welcome to the UJS representatives here. I wasn't looking particularly at you, Ella, who was immediate past president of UJS. Jeremiah Duggan. Yes, Eric.
Mr. President, Eric Moonman, Belsize Square Synagogue. To new deputies, they may well wonder what this case is about, and it is a complex one. I've been involved with this in trying to bring about some way of resolving a very complex issue. And I think what the paragraph does show is that the matter is not dead, because in fact, some years ago, not so very long ago, in fact the reference given is 2003, the young man was found dead in parts of Germany. And the attempts to try by his mother so determinedly to get the authorities to understand what the circumstances were and why this should have happened met with disdain, or indeed at times met with no response at all. I think it's right to keep this very much in the picture, and I think that your action, Mr. President, to ensure that we use the Foreign Secretary in this country to add further weight to our concern. What I would suggest, and knowing how difficult this has been of getting any reasonable response from the German authorities, is that if this fails, if in fact you get a reply which again doesn't give any further advance to the information we've got, I think we might ask deputies to start to write letters asking the Foreign Secretary to take it further. We've tried many, many things. like his mother, are not in fact intimidated by it, but we must keep this on the boil and activate it.
Thank you very much. Last item, World Jewish Congress. And any other matters that people wish to raise? Jerry, you've spoken already, so I'm not going to give you priority. But gentleman at the back, I can't see it. Oh, it's Jonathan Metlis. Welcome, Jonathan, to new deputy.
Well, I'm not actually a new deputy, but because I was at Muswell Hill many years ago. But I've now moved to the West End because life has perhaps got a little bit better. Anyway, I just want to make a couple of points, if I may. Central Synagogue, and a reference was Jonathan Metlis, and a reference was made to Barry Marcus and Galliano. And I would say, to correct the situation, that his approach to Galliano wasn't necessarily unanimously accepted at the synagogue. So you get the drift on that. There was a vacancy at Central Synagogue. I decided to take up the position with my friend Morris, who I think is in the corner. So we have two deputies, because I think this is a particularly significant and important time for the Board of Deputies. I'm also a trustee of Langdon, and I objected to Langdon becoming a member of the Jewish Leadership Council because of the exorbitant fee of £3,000 and the fact that Langdon, that was a slightly facetious comment, but Langdon were being brought into a totally undemocratic body. The Jewish community is totally and utterly confused by this impasse between the Jewish Leadership Council and the Board of Deputies. You have to decide and determine what the role of this body is as opposed to the Jewish Leadership Council. People do not know, and my view, and your Chief Executive knows because we did exchange a certain number of texts and emails last summer, that resulted in an impasse in relation to what went on in the streets at the time of the invasion of Gaza. And I would say, in terms of Golders Green, there was a march around Central Synagogue last summer.
Jonathan, you're on amber. Can I also mention this section is for questions to the President, not a general speech.
Well, here's a question. Please ensure that the police take appropriate action against those marching, against those Nazis marching against the Jewish community on Saturday, because that did not happen when Hamas sympathizers walked around Central Synagogue last summer with placards saying death to the Jews and Hamas were right. Thank you very much.
Right. Thank you very much. There will shortly be distributed some leaflets. Go ahead for Golders Green together. We may be asked to hold them up for a photo call. I'm going to take one more question. Jerry, can it be as brief as possible, please, so that we can stick to our timetable?
Jerry Lewis, Hampstead Synagogue. First of all, can I endorse and fully support your stance on Golders Green, and I'm very grateful to you for taking the proactive steps you have announced so far. There's one small note of discordancy, however. Tomorrow, taking place under the Jewish News banner, and I don't have any platform on their behalf, but there's a very important conference on Israel. Israel's Deputy Prime Minister, Silvan Shalom, Yair Lapid, and also Isaac Herzog, leader of the opposition, are all speaking. Ron Prosor is flying in. There are a number of others. It's a great shame, with all these top dignitaries in London today, that none of them were invited to participate in the opening board meeting today. I understand no approaches were made. It's a great shame. Opportunity missed. I hope we will find an opportunity to bring some of these top people to the board in practice that was followed before. Thank you.
Yes, thanks very much. Can I leave it? How do you... I'm going to move on if I don't mind. I beg your indulgence, Howard. I know you've also got some questions pending, which we will come to as soon as we can. I'm sorry they haven't been answered. I'm not responsible for organising tomorrow. I shall myself be in Israel, but Richard Verber will be going to the conference, and indeed Gillian is chairing, I think, one of the panels on it. I'm not sure of the arrangements about open access or not, but I don't think we were invited to offer it. There have been some questions to me, and again, what we do now is we simply show them in written form to the deputies with answers. I don't know if Roger Kuczynski is here, if he's got any follow-up, or Gary Mond, or Joe Millis, or Tal Fair. I'm prepared to take any genuine follow-ups, but I think the questions have been answered. Howard, I will give you the microphone now briefly, and then we will move on to our workshops. The Freshers' Fair, I should say.
Howard Erden, Pinner United Synagogue. It is in relation to Taillefer's question in relation to question time. Having attended the question time from Uxbridge, I've got 3 thoughts on the proposal. First, the format works when you have 5 people's views who tend to be different. As our HO's views should be largely the same, it would be unlikely to be a very interesting question time. Second, even leaving aside the difficulty of getting 5 people's diary commitments together, it seems an inefficient way of reaching out to the community, 5 people doing one person's job. And finally, the empty seats at board election hustings, both that hosted by the US in Edgware and that hosted by the JC in Finchley, both of which were widely publicised, strongly suggest to me that there's little demand for such events. So by all means, have one a year, say at Limwood, but no more than that.
Thank you. And by all means, talk to Tal afterwards and maybe you'll come up with a different formula. Deputies, thank you very much indeed. That concludes my statement. And what I'd like now to move to is our Freshers' Fair. Richard, would you like to just tell deputies where they're going to go?
Thank you, Johnny, and good afternoon again. So we're going to be moving 2 floors upstairs. This is the first floor. The Deputies' Freshers' Fair is happening on the 3rd floor. There are quite a number of us, so let me just try and, as swiftly as I can, explain where we're going to go. We're going to go back out through the main entrance where we came in. Colin, who is now waving, is going to lead the way. So Colin's wearing one of our new blue badges. If you see anybody wearing a blue badge, feel free to ask a question. If you need to take the lifts, take it up to floor 3. If you prefer to walk up the stairs, the stores are just to the left. We're going to be spending about 40 minutes upstairs, a chance for you to walk around the different stalls, a chance to say hello to people. Then we're coming back down here at 4:25.